Welcome to Rising Women Leaders. I'm your host, Meredith Ram, and I believe the time has come for women to share their gifts, their voice, and their stories. I love seeing women spiritually and financially empowered, thriving in their life's work, and doing what they love every day. I've gathered a community of women living their dreams to tell us their stories and inspire us to step into more courage, self-love, and feminine leadership. If you like this podcast, use the hashtag Rising Women Leaders, follow me on Instagram at Meredith Ram, and sign up for email updates at risingwomanleaders.com to get all the new and inspiring content. Now get cozy with a journal and a cup of tea. I hope you enjoy today's show. I'm here today with Erin Telford, who is a certified breathwork teacher, acupuncturist, Reiki Master, and herbalist. Her mission is to guide people to look within, open their hearts, and heal their relationship with themselves. She holds safe, sacred space for change through therapeutic conversation and lifestyle counseling. She is fiercely committed to doing her own personal work because she knows that she can only take her clients as deep and as far as she is willing to go. Her one-on-one sessions and workshops empower her clients to connect to their intuition so that they can find the answers they are looking for. She's been featured in Shape Magazine, Nylon, New York Magazine, Well and Good, the Numinous, and in Refinery 29 as one of the 6 women who are redefining wellness in New York City. Welcome, Erin.
Hi, so happy to be here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I know that you've been doing healing work for many years. And I just wanted to start with when you think back on your life or when you think back on those moments that were igniting of your own healing journey, I wonder if you could just speak to that, of what you felt like was a beginning or milestone for you in beginning your own healing work.
I mean, so many, and they have so many different flavors and so many different tones. It's like some of the moments where, the beginning moments were more out of like pain and suffering and desperation and looking for answers. I think that's, for many people, but just speaking for myself, that's one of the primary motivations to come to healing work is being in pain, being in suffering and confusion, and really beginning to look for something that can help, something outside of the realm of what you're seeing in front of you, something that's outside of the realm of like what's being presented as like a typical path of healing and wholeness. So I think that my investigation started somewhat as a child, being a curious child, but probably more so, some of my first like forays into investigating like another way of looking at the world and another way of being able to connect to spirit, where probably as like a, teenager, early 20s woman, experimenting with plant medicine and psychedelics and looking for, any of my like drug use or experimentation was really reflecting back. It was a desire, even though it was not completely realized at the time, to connect to God, to connect to spirit, to connect to an ecstatic experience and something outside of sort of like the mundane and the ordinary realm of the everyday. And so there was, for me, and, there's so many moments, but I know that when those sort of like doors of perception opened for me and I was able to connect to nature as like a living, breathing entity and have an understanding of like my smallness in the vastness of the universe and the feeling of oneness and connectedness with all beings was a huge comfort for me as a young human woman. So that was one, definitely. Buddhist meditation also provided me with very similar healing as mushrooms and acid did. That was also a vehicle for me to have the same experience of like, blending into cellular matter and recognizing how interconnected we all are, being able to expand my energy field out and feel other human beings as me, as one. And then, I guess the more defined kind of moment would be the moment that I finally entered into doing healing work for myself and realizing that when I found acupuncture, as like when I left working in the fashion world and discovered acupuncture when it was delivered to me as a sign, as a next step for my journey, how I was reconnecting to something ancient and something that I had known in other lifetimes, other parts of my existence. And as I entered into the healing world, working with acupuncture, that was a huge healing for me, because I realized that all the things that I considered part of my identity, things like anxiety, things like insomnia, things like depression, things like rage, all of those things were symptomatic of imbalances in my body, and things that could be healed through working with herbs and healed through working with my energy. And they just continue. They continue on and on, I would say, because breathwork is like my biggest, greatest love right now. That when I found breathwork, that was just like I felt like I got shot out of a cannon in regards to my healing. I'd already been working on it in so many different ways over my life. But that was such a huge, huge, huge push to realize that the amount of self-healing I could do just with my own physical body and my breath, and that I could clear all these like decades of pain and loss and sadness and frustration and deeply embedded emotional patterns, that I could actually move those, and that I could even further purify and clean out much of what I thought was part of who I was, but was really just layers of, social conditioning and history and lineage and pain and programming. So, yeah, I could probably give you like 5 more, but those are a bunch. Those are kind of like some little hit points on my road.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned, one, I was reading a blog post of yours before this call, and it was about feeling our feelings.
Yeah.
And that's been really big for me too. And actually, I was living in New York City before moving to California, and was experiencing, a lot of emotional pain after going through a breakup, but also a lot of physical body pain. And at that point, didn't really know where to turn other than to Western medicine, and going to the college counselors and asking for help. And a lot of what I was offered at that time were prescriptions, like muscle relaxants for the pain in my body, or antidepressants for, everything that I was feeling. And so that reading your post really spoke to me of just like, in our society, we are so quick to numb out our pain because we're not sure how to deal with it and hold space for it. But the real shift for me was in discovering yoga and actually being in the space of, and being invited to breathe and to feel it and to uncover everything that was there. So I wonder if you could speak to feeling our pain, feeling our emotions, your personal experience with that, and just what the wisdom is there for us.
Another giant question. I love that. So yeah, feeling your feelings. I think that probably a lot of people that are listening to your podcast would identify as being empathic or sensitive. And I think that, any people who are investigating healing paths and curious and interested, they probably have some degree of emotional sensitivity, energetic sensitivity, acknowledged or unacknowledged. So I think that from a very early age, I was kind of numbing my feelings through fantasy, through a lot of books and escapism. And as I grew a little bit older, that turned into numbing out with, drugs and alcohol, and using that as a vehicle, as a buffer between me and other people, and as a buffer between me and the feelings that I had, that I didn't know what to do with them. There was no route. There was no vent. There was no solution. other than being, kind of turning it inward and being self-destructive. I'm a very, very, very big feeler. Things, have in the past until I, learn some more tools, they get into me sharp and quick. And the emotional, range, emotional palette that I've discovered that I hold is very big. I can go to, the darkest dark and the deepest depths. And, I never, until I discovered, breathwork and breathing, I never had a way to manage those emotions. And so, much like you, I felt, great amounts of tightness and tension and knots in my neck and my shoulders, different pains in my body and my abdomen, stuck energy, discomfort in my digestive system. And once I discovered, when I found breathwork and I hit upon this magical, amazing thing that allowed me to constructively vent my feelings in a sacred container, it was like, it's like if your ship is sinking and all of a sudden you got a chance, someone gives you a bucket and you got to start bailing the water out. It was like that. It was like every time I did breath work, it was like opening up an opportunity, like a grief window, a rage window, an anxiety window, to start bailing out those feelings in a way that was like truthfully unburdening my body, like in a very real and profound way, moving that energy out of my body in a way that wasn't going to slip back in. So my philosophy, nobody wants to feel their feelings because it sucks. It's painful, like feeling the depth of your depression, feeling, betrayed or wounded or disappointed or abandoned or hurt or attacked or, any of those things, heartbreak, having to cut off contact with your parents, having somebody die, having somebody reject you, whatever it looks like those are exquisitely, exquisitely painful moments. And they are incredibly hard to feel all the way, especially if you're a sensitive person. But to be able to hold yourself in the thick and the sharpness and the depth and the and awfulness of a really painful experience, and then also have a way to physically move it out of your body while you're doing it, for me has been some of the most profound work, because we only can do so much healing with our mind. There's a huge difference between talking about our feelings and having an intellectual understanding of what happened to us or what our history is or what we're going through, and actually really making contact with the sharpness and the ferociousness of the awfulness of the feeling. Mm-hmm. And I feel like as people learn how to hold themselves through those feelings, your resilience builds, your grace builds, your trust in yourself builds, your ability to know that I don't have to be afraid of myself. I don't have to be afraid of what I'm holding inside. I can hold myself through this, and I'm strong enough, I'm brave enough, I have enough courage to just be with this feeling 100%. And if I can stay there for, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, it's going to move, and something good is going to come out of it. I'm going to lift my burden. I'm going to lighten my load, and I'm going to prove to myself that I can do this. I can feel this. And it's, it's amazing. I don't know if I answered the question, but
yeah. There's a lightness that you find on the other side.
Yeah, so much lightness.
Yeah.
And just like yoga, it's when you, and I have practiced yoga for a number of years as well. When you have that practice of I'm holding myself in this shape, it's uncomfortable. I'm going to keep breathing. I'm going to stay with it. I'm going to stay with myself. The more times you do that, the more you can keep doing it no matter what happens. And it's so exhilarating to be able to deepen your capacity as a human to hold yourself through your experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So having the body experiences of that are really, really helpful as a kind of a metaphor of we can hold ourselves in those uncomfortable situations whenever they come up in our lives, not just when we're in the uncomfortable pose with our body.
Absolutely.
I wonder if you could speak to breathwork ceremonies, what they are, and just anyone that's unfamiliar to them, what happens in a breathwork ceremony, and kind of just take us through what that looks like.
Mm-hmm. They're so fun. I say they're so fun because I'm leading them. I tell other people they're an adventure. So, or I kind of like laugh evilly when I say this. So, I do them one-on-one, and then I do them in groups. And so, a breathwork group ceremony is going to be, however many people are in the group, we're going to sit in a circle together. I'm going to clear the space. I'm going to cleanse the space, and I'm going to open up with, much as you would at a yoga class, a little bit of a kind of Dharma type talk, really calling on the energy of the moment, calling on, what it feels like the group needs, calling on any themes that are, coming up, planetarily, astrologically, connecting with the moon, connecting with, emotions of the season. So I'm just going to speak a little bit about, what breathwork is, what breathwork does, and explain what it's for, which is really basically giving the mind something to focus on so that you can go inside, so that you can go past your thinking brain and go into your body to connect with your heart, your intuition, and your emotional center, for the purpose of clearing, for the purpose of releasing, for the purpose of connecting with the vibration of love, with your essence, and with something greater than you, which would be, spirit, or whatever name you want to put on it. And then I have everybody lay down. Usually with my groups, there's, I've been doing this for a while, so there's a beautiful size group. There's usually about 30 to 40 people. And there's something that is so it is one of my deepest joys and pleasures to watch groups as they work. They all have their own unique personality. They all have their own flavor. They all have their own style. And the way that a group energy forms and gets together is just cool. It is, it's a beautiful thing to witness, people beginning to open up, and even just through the, I'm holding space for the group, but through every person's participation, they're lending their own bravery and courage and resilience to the group. And so they are, through just being themselves, they are adding support and safety to the group as a whole. And so it's, I put music on, I create playlists for all the groups, work with sage, work with Palo Santo, work with sweetgrass to be clearing energy. We work with the energy of laughter, to kind of dispel any kind of serious, earnest, determined kind of feelings around having to make it work or make healing really intense. And so I, have the group laugh to help them open up their hearts, let them know that joy is part of healing, laughter is part of healing. You don't have to be so hard on yourself. We work with the energy of making big sounds together, throwing, an adult temper tantrum. I have people, stomp their feet on the floor, pound their fists on the floor, wiggle their hips out, and just let them make a big yelling sound or a groan or whatever feels good to them. And usually it's wildly cathartic for people to just scream their heads off together as a group. And it's not about being angry. It can be about venting rage, but it's really about just clearing the throat, letting yourself open up, clearing out any frustration energy, stuck energy. I'm not allowed to speak. I'm not allowed to take up space energy. I'm not, my voice isn't welcome energy. I'm too much energy. And then there's kind of a little bit of a roller coaster metaphor with the groups, or even with the one-on-one session where there's kind of some effort that goes into it in the beginning, kind of like climbing up a ladder of a roller coaster, and then you kind of hit this peak at the top, and then it's just like zoom, and you're off, and you are being breathed. You're not thinking about the breath. You're just doing it. And there's a huge amount of, just emotional release on a number of different levels. And a lot of times, and we switch to rest after about 30, 35 minutes of breathing. And during that time, it's like I've had some of my greatest business ideas, some of my greatest intuitive insights, dots connect, things that I haven't been able to find answers, to through books or conversation or, other therapeutic methods are all of a sudden just like, boom, oh, that's it. Okay, got it. So there's a lot of clarity. There's a lot of, psychic information that comes in while you're resting, which is a cool thing too, because, people think it always happens when you're working, but during this like constructive rest period, it's like a lot of stuff comes in too.
Right.
So, yeah.
Are you breathing in and out through the mouth? Or
all through the mouth.
It's kind of a heavy breath, right?
Yeah, it's a breath into the low belly, inhale into the low belly, filling the belly, inhale into the high chest, filling the chest, and then exhaling to release. So kind of 2 quick half inhales and then just letting the exhale go. And there's a certain like rate and tempo to it to push the energy and to work the clearing.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So I was part of a breathwork ceremony in Mexico at the end of my yoga teacher training. And it's some people in the space were having quite a big emotional release. It can really, you're oxygenating your body so much and you're just like creating a container for yourself to really let go and move through things. It's powerful.
It's so powerful. It's crazy. Yeah, the thing that I always hear from people, or not always, but the most common response that I get from people is like, people sit up and they'll say, well, that was worth years of therapy. Like the amount, it's very efficient. And like, New Yorkers love it because it's fast, it's efficient, effective. People just want to feel better. People don't want to feel better in 5 years. They want to feel better like in 30 minutes. They want to feel better now. So
if you let yourself go all in with it.
Yeah. Yes.
Could you tell us about your very first breathwork ceremony?
Oh, yeah. It was incredible. Oh, wow. So yeah, I was, the circumstances could have been more perfect, but I was on a yoga retreat with some 2 yoga teachers that were good friends of mine, and we were in Nicaragua, and, it was positioned very lightly. There was not really any explanation of what we were doing. So I'm on a yoga retreat. I'm thinking, oh, we're going to do breath work. We're going to do some alternate nostril breathing. We're going to do some walks. We're going to just basics, basic yogic breath. And so we go up to this like outdoor kind of open air area that was, we were right on the beach. And so it's open air, and it was dark. I think that the sun was setting, and so that the jungle noises were just starting to kind of kick in. So you could hear the birds, you could hear a lot of insects, and you could hear the waves crashing on the beach. And, we started the breath, and very quickly I started feeling really a lot of sadness coming up. And I was like, why? I'm such an emotional person, but in that moment I was like, why do I feel like I want to cry right now? I'm just breathing. What's going on? And starting to feel a little bit like anxious and uncomfortable. And as I'm starting to feel this emotional energy move in my body, and I really wanted to cry, but I felt very self-conscious. And other than the jungle backdrop, which is really intense, one of the yoga teachers, Amanda, she was singing, sacred songs and using a drum very softly, very gently, nothing very like intense or rousing. And so I'm kind of like riding this wave of discomfort and like curiosity and confusion about why I felt like I wanted to sob. And then I had, there was a woman on my right who her mother had just died recently. And there was a man on my left who had lost his grandmother. And both of them were a lot more comfortable vocally and with emotional expression. So they both start sobbing. And once I heard them, I was like, oh, okay, this is happening now. I get to do this too. So their emotional expression gave me permission to feel what I needed to feel. And then I just let it loose. And, it was, I don't know how long we were breathing for. I know that I got to pour out just, decades and decades of pain and anger and frustration and silencing and insecurity and self-criticism and self-judgment. And it moved through me as pure emotion. It wasn't that I was hooking on to any specific memories. It was just that I was feeling. I was just in a complete body visceral experience of vibration and emotion. And towards the end, my friend Luke, he came over and he gave me a rose quartz. But I felt someone with me, continuing to be with me after he put that stone on my body or in my hand or wherever he put it. And I felt my little sister was killed about 8 or 9 years ago, and I felt just she was there with me. She was there with me. Her hand, was on my chest. She was right there with me, and that's been something that many people have experienced. Their loved ones have come back from the other side and held their hands or put their hands on their body, and it was so such a palpable presence. It was so incredible. And when I sat up, when we were all done, I was just in shock. I was totally in shock, and I grabbed Luke and I was like, what the hell was that? What did we just do? What just happened? I was just like dumbfounded. And I felt such a strong, like some of the most strongest love I'd ever felt for people that I didn't know that well. And I asked if we could all hold hands because my heart connection to them was just so deep. And just the feeling of love, gratitude, openness, and connection to source and to just other human beings as amazing people on my path was like nothing I'd ever experienced before. And I was just sold. Just like 100% sold. And I immediately, like, as soon as we were done, I ran back to my room and like looked up my teacher, David Elliott, and booked a retreat with him. There's, of course there was one like the following month. So I went to study with him then. And I just know that I can offer that same experience to other people. And it's one of the greatest gifts I've ever received. And so I love to hold people through that experience as well.
So powerful. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah. And I imagine there are people out there listening to this who are like, I want to try this. How do I start? Well, where do I go? Like, what do you suggest to people who've never heard of something like this, and where to begin? Is this something that you need to do in person? Do people ever do recordings? Tell us about it.
So, I mean, I do offer the full breathwork session is going to be about 45 minutes. But you can breathe for shorter amounts of time. So if you're like, that sounds super weird, but I'm intrigued by that. I do have a 7-minute guided breath video on my website on the resources page. So people can always just like get a little taste and experience, the vibrations in their body and what it feels like to just move their energy for a little amount of time. It's a very safe sort of amount of time to do it for, because it doesn't necessarily push you into like any big emotions, but it's going to move you a little bit. And if you're sitting on something, if you're feeling depressed, or if you're feeling some strong emotions, it might move them, but it's a safe container, that 7-minute practice. I do offer virtual one-on-one sessions, and I do offer virtual groups as well. And I have some full sessions that are guided video recordings in my shop. So, if you want to do it in person with somebody, there are quite a few different styles of breath work. The one that I practice, there are, I don't have resources in like every state or every city, but you could always contact me if you wanted to do something in person with somebody, or we could always do a virtual session, because I've done groups and I've done one-on-ones and I've done virtual sessions, and it's ultimately because you're just using your body and your breath, and it's a self-healing practice. Just having somebody hold space for you in person is just the same as having a screen separated between you two. So it's many different ways to access it.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Well, people have resources they can look into. I'd love to hear about your connection to your own inner guidance and what I've been hearing you say is soul whispers.
Yeah.
And and I've also been hearing through the grapevine that a move is coming your way in the next month, and I'd love to hear about that. What has been happening for you?
So, I mean, I think I started, the biggest, the most, I think I started really working with my intuition and my connection to spirit when I was working in fashion and when I was needing to make a move and to leave that world. And I started praying like every day at that point in my life. And I'd never really done that before. I'd never really cultivated a relationship with something, an energy that was bigger than me. And so that's really when I started doing that. And it delivers information. And especially the more that you nurture that relationship with your intuition and with your external guidance, divine assistance. So, I start with this move I'm making. I did start to get, and I mean, breathwork puts you in touch with your intuition in such a deep way. It's really just one of the best ways to cultivate your connection to your own internal guidance and what makes sense for you and what your heart's saying. So a couple of years ago, I started getting some little pushes that were, telling me that I needed to leave New York and that I needed to really be in nature. I needed to be on the earth, of the earth, with the earth, nurturing the earth. And that for my next level of personal evolution and healing, that was a connection that I really needed to cultivate and grow. And I just couldn't see a way. I couldn't see a way that I could do it financially. I couldn't see a way that I was just like, how would I do that? How would I make any money? How would I pay my bills? And then, the idea of kind of being this solo woman, I'm not in a relationship right now. And so the idea of like, getting a little one-room shack in Joshua Tree by myself sounded, terribly lonely and isolating. And so I was just, over the past couple of years, the whispers just started getting stronger and stronger until they were just not to be ignored anymore. And all of the fears and all of the what ifs and hows just really vanished. And it just became very clear that it didn't matter if I knew what I was going to do. It didn't matter if I knew where I was going to go, that I just needed to go. And so I started getting, I made a declaration to my breathwork, community and my teacher that I announced to a group of like 40 people that I needed the two things I needed for my next stage of my journey were Mother Earth and sacred love partnership. And I created a vision circle, like a vision board, but a circle. And once I had really I'd never done that kind of thing before where I was like clear and I said it out loud and I said it to people. And then I made a picture of it, an altar of it. And I was even surprised by what ended up on my vision circle because it was like, all the pictures were outside. It's like women in the jungle carrying surfboards and women on the beach, like curled up in blankets together and fires outside and the Grand Canyon and Antelope Canyon and, hawks and people doing breath work on blankets on the ground and all these things. And I was just like, it's so obvious, like this is what I need to do. And so I started getting little bits of information. I got a date, which was October, which is, in 5 weeks. And then I just, I'm just listening. I'm listening very gently and very carefully to, the numbers I see, the insects that cross my path, to, I'll be listening to music on my phone. All of a sudden it switches to a podcast. I'm like, oh my God, I didn't touch the phone. I guess I have to listen to that one about the woman who goes to Costa Rica and is like listening to her dreams, So yeah, it's been little cues to just like open up, all three eyes and look and pay attention and then listen and pay attention and feel and pay attention. So opening up all my senses and just getting grounded, getting quiet and just knowing like this is a 100% intuitively guided, faith and trust filled endeavor where I'm just going to go. I picked a first place. I'm going to go and then I'm going to see how it feels. So I know how long I have to be there. And I'm going to spend a lot of time laying on the ground.
Wow.
You know, and that's about it. You know, it's not like glamorous laptop life. It's like literally laying on the dirt and listening and then writing and resting. And whatever comes of that, you know, whatever creativity it comes from that, whatever personal physical healing comes from that, whatever is birthed from me being in the opposite energy that I've been in for the last 14 years is just, I'm very, very curious about that.
There's something so exciting and exhilarating about having no idea around what's going to come and just like total freedom like that.
I know. And I love that you say that too, because I feel like what I hear again and again from people is like fear of the unknown, fear of the unknown. And I'm just like, but what could happen? Like, how exciting is that? I have no clue. That means anything could happen, you know? And if it's something hard, I'll just deal with it, because there will be something hard that happens.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Where is the first place that you chose?
First place is Texas, funnily enough. And my friend that I'm going to go stay with, it was interesting because I met her daughter for the first time a couple months ago, and her daughter's 10, and her daughter's, of course, like this magnificent indigo child who's just like next level. And I was just, my mind is blown by her. And her daughter asked me to come live with them. And when she asked, her mom turns around, she was like, what? Because we're in the car and, you know, we'd only known each other for a couple hours, but it was to have a young woman ask me to come join her and her mom in their new home really felt correct and exciting. And they were not flooded. So they're outside of Austin in a small town in the country. And they were not flooded. So I will be going to the south first and seeing how that feels. And there's a lot of swimming holes. And my friend she works in a very profound way with energy, and she's also writing a book. So we'll be caretaking her daughter and writing and swimming a lot and getting a lot of rest. So that's
wow. Tell us about this book and this idea that you have.
Yeah. So, you know, it's been coming through, and I just want to celebrate you on this podcast for writing your book, because I know even just like in advance of myself getting started, what a labor of love and inspiration, and just there's such value in just telling our stories and the multiple perspectives that we have on healing and how to love ourselves. So, congratulations to you again.
Thank you.
My book is going to be about feeling your feelings. It's going to be about, taking a combination of just personal experience, breathwork experience, and then Chinese medicine, and talking through, what it means when you have a feeling. Like, take every single emotion that you could possibly have, and talk about what it feels like in your body, what the message of your emotion is, because people like to go, positive, negative emotions. And so nobody wants to feel the negative emotions. They feel like they're bad. They need to just like get past them, not feel them, disregard them, feel guilty when they have them. And so I want to talk about, the value and the message of, anger, of fear, of worry, and, where those are held in your body, where they can get stuck, how to work with them, what they're trying to tell you. So talking about the 7 main emotions, and then also energetic boundaries, the mother wound, shame, guilt, addiction, all of the ways that we buffer and avoid and push away pain, and how we can work with it and work through it so that we can, integrate as adults to be able to take our shadow side and incorporate it into our full being for an experience of wholeness and self-acceptance.
That sounds really valuable. I think we could all use that.
I hope it pours out. I'm counting on it just like pouring out easily. Yeah. We'll see.
Beautiful. Well, it's so nice to give yourself the time and the space to really focus on that.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
very excited.
Yeah. And if you get stuck anywhere in the way, feel free to reach out to
I
me.
will call
I have
you.
some
Yeah.
tips. And yeah, for me, it really helped having someone hold me accountable to like
Oh, yeah.
having to send a submission every 2 weeks. And that
Oh, that's
was,
good. That's really
yeah.
good. I like that. I like that. I
Yeah.
think I'll adopt that. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, well, so one thing I feel really called to ask you about is about heartbreak
Mm,
and just what you, it's something that we've all experienced, I think, and something that maybe even people listening right now might be going through. Or I'm curious if just your own personal experience, if you've gone through that in the last recent years, and just what helped you through that? And what could you speak to about that for anyone?
oh, I love that topic so much. Yeah, I've had my heart broken a million times, definitely. And, I've been on both sides. I've left relationships. I mean, over the past couple years, I would say, there were two primary long-term relationships that I was in. And oh God, that's such a good question. It's so big. And then I had one recent one too. So there, of the two, deepest, most recent relationships that I was in, they were both relationships that I left. One of them was with a man. That before I entered into these two relationships, I had been saying that I wanted one type of relationship, but the type of people that I was choosing were people that had nowhere even close to capacity to actually give me the things that I wanted. And so I was choosing them very unconsciously. I was choosing them because they were allowing me to not deal with my own stuff and be the kind of like the good one by default. So because I was choosing people that couldn't show up for me, I got to stay in like blame and frustration and not having to look at, what part of me was attracted to those people, what part of me needed to work on my own self-love so that I could choose someone to be in equal partnership with. So there's a lot of drama with those types of relationships, a lot of like angst and pain and frustration and emotional unavailability. And so I had kind of grounded myself and said, you can't go out with anybody until you start making better choices in men. And the very next man that I met was just an absolutely incredible human being, a wonderful man. And I find there are some women that I see in my practice where there's a lot of guilt when you leave a good man, when you leave someone who is, committed to you and available to you for long-term partnership, and who, maybe wants to have a child with you, or wants to get married, or who's, ready for all those things, but your heart just feels like there's some fairly large piece of connection and intimacy that's just not available with that person. And so, and that man I was with when my sister was killed. So there was just like a lot of grief and confusion and sadness that was like layered and mixed into our relationship. And, when I left him, it was devastating for both of us. It was incredibly painful. And I think like the three things that you deal with when you have a breakup is, you deal with the, feeling like someone cut your arm off, like this appendage, this best friend, this companion, this lover, this partner. You have to break up with just the physical and emotional pain of them not being in your life. Who do you call to share the funny thing with? Who do you when you want to text someone something, that only that person will understand, like reaching out into air, knowing that they're not available for that anymore, and just the grief and loss of that. And then you're grieving the loss of the co-created future, the fantasy, the hopes and the dreams and everything you spoke about, everything you talked about that you were going to do together. And then also, I think for most women, you have to, some of the real work is is breaking up with a pattern that got you into the relationship in the first place, because most of us have some kind of patterning that we deal with in relationships. A similar type of person that we attract, a similar situation that we get into again and again. So yeah, I mean, the tincture of time, I feel like for grief and loss and heartbreak, it's a huge opportunity to look within and look at your own stuff. For me, I'm not gonna lie and say that I go into like immediate spiritual surrender. A lot of times it looks like drinking wine and watching a lot of television, because that's what feels good. distraction, keeping busy, going out with a lot of friends, getting as much rest as you possibly can. But when you're ready to kind of come out of the cave, like really being willing to honestly look at yourself and confront yourself and take responsibility for your side of the street, what you created, what you contributed to the relationship, what you didn't contribute to the relationship, where you were showing up or you weren't showing up, clarity around what you're asking for, if you're clear about the kind of relationship that you want, and are you available for that, and are you willing to ask for it? Are you willing to, deal with the isolation and the loneliness of not being in partnership, so that you can hold out for something that is, collaborative and generative and growth oriented. Yeah, I mean, there's so much. I had a heartbreak that was, were you going to say something? I feel like you're going to interject us.
Keep going.
So I had, so there was a breakup with the man that was the good man. And then there was someone else that I dated after him who was, I realized we really connected on the level of our wounding. And that created some crazy chemistry and some like wild passion. And when I left that relationship, I realized that I was wildly codependent, and I hadn't I hadn't clued into that at all before. So that was a massive, massive experience for me, learning that was how I operated in relationship and had been for a long time, within my family, within all my romantic partners. So that was a gigantic healing for me to like witness that and work on healing that. And so I've had a handful of other partnerships since then. And I recently had an experience with this really incredible, it was just like a very, like he just kind of dropped out of the sky, and we had this incredible connection. It was very short-lived, but what was fascinating to me was that just to witness it's always interesting when you find yourself in a similar situation, but you have a totally different response to it. And that's always the way that I know that I've integrated something. So we had this like wild connection, and I was like, oh, he's my twin flame. Wow, this guy. And then he chose somebody else. He chose to be with somebody else. And it was shocking the way that happened. The way that it unfolded was just bizarre. But for the first time in my whole life, I did not have any need to go down the road of, what did I do wrong? What was it about me that made him not choose me? And that was such a delightful and surprising experience that I didn't need to, that my self-love and my self-esteem is so intact about how I show up that wasn't even a question. There was some other roads that I needed to go down with this, about how I showed up and what I could take responsibility for. But to not have to self-judge about who you are or what you look like or any of those things about you after a relationship ends was astonishing how fast I was able to heal from that, not needing to go down that path.
Wow.
And that's a result for me. That's a result of breath work, among other things. But to know that my self-love is so strong that I don't need to self-attack when I'm not, quote unquote, chosen by somebody.
Yeah, that's liberating.
So liberating.
And I speak to this in my book, actually, because the book begins and ends with a breakup that I went through. And you see the evolution of how I reacted in the beginning, which is just like a lot of anger and resentment and reactivity. But by the end, after that journey of self-discovery and being in India and visiting spiritual teachers and going to Vipassana and really learning how to hold myself with so much love, and it's coming to that moment of where someone maybe isn't choosing you in the way that you want, to actually be able to hold that love for yourself and be like, this is okay. And I am in control of my own experience right now. I can hold myself with this love and not necessarily need someone else outside of me to change in order for me to be okay.
I love that. I love that our experiences are parallel, even though that I didn't even know that you had that experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's deep. That's deep. And that's like, when you know that your value is not influenced by external situations, like you're pretty solid.
Yeah.
Like I know that my value is not negotiable and it doesn't go up or down depending on how other people perceive me or feel about me. And that's like saved my life.
Yes.
And my heart.
Yes. And that actually relates to the one more question I want to ask you about, which is being a businesswoman.
Yeah.
And just like having that innate value, I imagine has really helped you in coming more into that. But I wanted to ask you, what would you attribute to your success as a woman in business?
I mean, there's a lot of factors involved with that. I would say, from the beginning, it's been a little bit over 7 years since I've been in business, since I've had a practice. And it's been one of the biggest initiations of my life because it's so confrontive to your self-esteem and your self-value. I had to do a lot of personal work around money and receiving and being able to feel worthy of receiving in the beginning so that I could actually ask people for money and accept money. But I never had I never had a plan B. I knew from the very beginning I was going to make this work. I was going to make it work well because it was a labor of love. It was coming from my heart. It was something that I wanted to share more than anything in the world. And I knew that if I stuck with it and I was creative and I was persistent and I just kept sharing myself again and again and again and telling my stories and sharing my experience and saying like, this is what worked for me. This is what I did. This was my experience of my anxiety, of my depression, of my addictive tendencies, of my relationship with my mom, my relationship with my dad, my relationship with grieving and loss and death and heartbreak and all those things. And I just kept sharing, I did put structures in place, but I think that just coming across again and again and again as a human being who's willing to connect with other human beings and saying like, hey, I'm just like you. I've had to work through all this stuff. There's nothing that's particularly like special or different about me. I'm just committed. I'm committed to myself. And because I'm committed to myself, I'm committed to you. And I'm right there. I might be a couple steps ahead. Maybe I'm not like half a step ahead, but I'm doing this work. I'm on the ground. I'm in the trenches. I'm showing up. And I'm like constantly self-examining and constantly self-evaluating so that I can hold someone's hand through everything or anything that's going on. And I think that humanity and human connection and being willing to be intimate and vulnerable and unafraid of people and what they're holding and just encouraging, loving, being available for people. That's, other than taking B school and reading a lot of books about money and business, it's the humanity, it's the humanness of just saying like, I'm here for you. I get it. Let's talk about it. Let's do something about it again and again and again. And just showing up in that way and being an open, safe container for people to come to and know that this is a space where anything goes, where, there's no shame, there's no judgment, there's no rejection, there's no shock, there's no gasping. It's just like, yeah, tell me what's going on for you and let's work on it. No big deal.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of my philosophy, is that I'm here for you. So whatever you got, it's fine. Let's get the work.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's being able to hold that space because you've really shown up for yourself in that way as well.
Yeah.
And sharing from your experience and attracting the kind of people that really needed the help and could relate to you.
Yeah. And it's like the greatest honor of my whole life. Like when people come to me with, I've had people come to me with some stuff that is just like, it's so, oh my God, it's so intensely heartbreaking and so terrible. And, I'm just like, thank you. Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for, it's a deep honor to work with people at a human level and at a pain level.
Yeah.
So everybody's my teacher. Every single person that walks in the door is a teacher for me.
Mm-hmm. We're all mirrors for each other. What's coming up in your business now? And what are you excited about? Any offerings that you want to share about for people listening?
So, I'm really excited to see what develops as it's like in 5 more weeks, I'm going to be taking everything online. So, I'm already doing virtual one-on-one sessions. And I'm planning on doing, I'm going to see how it rolls out, but, I've never done just conversational sessions before. So I think I'm going to roll out something called a guiding light session, where if there's just a little bit of extra stuff that needs to be unpacked, I feel like I've got quite a bit of experience. I have a massive backlog of experience from all the really hard stuff that I've had to work through in my life, that I feel that I would love to share with people and hold people through. So that's going to be something like a little bit of a shorter session where we just have some, kind of like mentorship and counseling. And then I'm planning on eventually putting together some kind of a self-study program that is, breathwork for all different emotional experiences, and just putting together some of the tools, how to cultivate a faith practice, how to cultivate a connection with an energy that's greater than you. How I learned to love myself, different kind of worksheets and exercises and shorter breath works that are going to be utilizing some of the tools that I've used to get where I am right now in my life. And then, of course, the book, which probably won't be out for like a year, but who knows? I'm not really sure. I know that once I get on land, what might come through and what might be an offering for me is going to be different than what I think it is right now sitting in Manhattan. So, I would watch my website for October 1st and beyond and just see, what's coming up there and what's available.
Cool. That's beautiful. Yeah. Open to receive what the lands and spirits want to guide you to.
Yeah.
Well, this has been an honor and a joy to get to chat with you. Do you have any closing words before I just close this call with a short prayer?
I just want to say thank you so much to you for finding me, inviting me, connecting with me, and wanting to share this conversation with your people. I really appreciate just your warmth and your what you're bringing through in the world, and I'm honored to walk with you and walk beside you in sisterhood. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Let's just take that in, close our eyes for a moment. Okay. Feel our breath. And everyone listening, just anything that resonated with you today, just take that right into your heart. Hold that as a gem with you throughout the rest of your day. May you know that you're loved. May you know that you are safe to feel exactly what it is that you feel. Knowing that there's so much available to you when you can open to that unknown and trust those little soul whispers that are available to all of us. Bring my hands to my heart and just bow. Namaste. Thanks so much for taking the time to listen to our show today. We would love to hear what you think. Take a moment to hop on over to iTunes and leave us a review. We'd be so grateful to receive it. Until next time, namaste.